All right. Oh my goodness. Got some people joining in right now. I will admit. All right, the Hoff. Robin. Oh my goodness. 1847. All right, folks. Hope everyone's doing well. Just getting myself set up here in my basement. Me and my cat. Apparently, Winnie the Pooh is joining us as well. Hey, Sid, welcome. All right. Hope everyone's chilling. Enjoying some great weather today here on the East Coast. Hopefully similar for you guys, wherever you are. All right. Let's see here. All right. So here's the story, because I do want to have time for Q&A and just open discussion, whatever you guys have left. I'm going to jump in and start going. Let's see. Oh, my goodness. Everyone's joining. It's a verified party. Well, all right. How's that? Is that better? Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that. I can see my cat as well. All right. Awesome. I appreciate that. Not sure how I muted myself. Awesome. All right. So with that said, I'm going to dive in here and go ahead and get in this presentation. So what I'm hoping to accomplish tonight is to talk a little bit about managing your gear. And so I do it in a basic perspective, but there's some deeper elements I'll dive into. And the reason why I go through this is that most people don't make gear decisions based off of how they're evolving as an athlete. Their gear decisions are typically a function of financial situation, a function of time. Maybe there's a deal or something that's happening, and as a result, what that means is that sometimes people are I'm not sure how else to say it, like over or under geared, right? So they're under geared in terms of like what they need. Then maybe over geared, their equipment is just too good for what they have, right? And we see this all the time with people who have fantastic bikes, but they're at the very, very back of the pack. Now, of course, if you've got money, who am I to say you can't spend your money on your gear? But the point of this presentation is just to be a little more intentional around how you manage your gear and how do you select things, okay? So by the end of this presentation, you'll have a good understanding of sort of what the important gear is for you and how to decide that. Some easy tips on how to go about unpacking that and figuring it out. And then hopefully having a concept of what it means to draft a gear plan, and then being ready to shop when you need to shop, okay? So not getting crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, triathletes and endurance athletes in general end up getting pretty obsessed about stuff and pretty excited. And sometimes you can find yourself down a path where you've got something that's incredible that you don't even use. I can't tell you how many people I know who have power meters who just use them like little tiny cycling computers and have no idea. They just have a power meter. They don't know what to do with it. And at the end of the day, I want you to have gear that matches your expectations and your goals. The gear is meant to be there to help you achieve your goals, not to become an obstacle or problem or something that you just don't need, or something that you just don't need to manage, which becomes more of a detriment down the road, okay? All right, so next one. When you think about your gear plan, there's kind of two questions you're answering. So the first one is just figuring out what gear has the biggest impact on what you're doing. When we think about what that means, you know, say you've got like 4 options on the table, what's the best option for you? If there's an altitude tent on the table, right? Or you've got something like Normatec boots on the table for recovery, or maybe you have a brand new awesome watch that does all the whiz-bangery stuff. From my perspective, I would get that awesome watch because I can use it on training, I can use it in racing, I can use it in any discipline. It uploads to my training plans. It does all of those pieces of the puzzle. And to me, that's far more important as a resource than boots that I would only use after, say, runs or particular weekends. So I would start with that resource that I need first, and then I'd move my way up the chain and get other things, right? So starting with asking yourself, you know, is this the next big thing that I need, the biggest impact for you, right? And then thinking in the same vein, what's the next best upgrade relative? So if you're trying to move, as you move into your, first or your odd years of endurance nation plans, we're focusing on the bike, obviously. That's a great time to plan to be upgrading some element of your bike. It could be adding a power meter, it may be adding new wheels, it could be a new front end, you may be upgrading the whole bike, you may get an indoor training setup, whatever it may be. We want to think about how your gear maps to your evolutionary process as an athlete. Of course, it's not always linear, but we certainly try to plan that way as we go through your season, okay? So why do we have a gear plan? There's a couple of really important reasons. First and foremost, gear fits to your current and short-term needs. So we want to start with that first. So like I said earlier, there's always people who whose equipment selection is as ambitious as their race goals. So they're buying things like swim skins for the time that they're going to compete at the World Championships when they can't wear a wetsuit, but they haven't qualified yet. Like, you don't need to be thinking about that. You don't need gear that's beyond where you are right now, okay? Another reason why we want a gear plan is that we want to have time to test that gear. So if you're going to upgrade your wheels, or we're going to upgrade our indoor training setup, or we're going to a new heart rate monitor, perhaps you're trying new run shoes, whatever your transition piece is, we want the time to test it. You want to wear it. You want to run in it. You want to ride it. You want to descend on it. You don't want to be the person who, you know, gets the new wheels the week of race week, carbon rims. Now you have carbon pads on the carbon rims, and guess what? It's raining and it's Lake Placid, and now you're fearing for your life and you've never had a chance to ride them. So planning ahead allows you to budget in opportunities for you to test and work with this gear. An example from an ultra running place would be, you know, running with a vest. That vest is a critical component to your day in terms of transporting food and fluids, your general safety items. It needs to be comfortable and sufficient. It has to be breathable, depending on the conditions that you're racing in. It may need to be reflective, depending on the type of event you have. Those are things that you want to have done right. You don't want to have a vest that's like awesome, it wins all the points for pockets, but it totally chafes your armpits. That's no good. And you want to find that out long before you're in the final few weeks to your race, right? So you want to have that dialed in early, okay? We're also going to be able to adjust your usage of things as you go forward. So you may decide that you want to upgrade, say, your shoes, and then you realize that these shoes are fast, like those of you running in the Nike 4%. You may like those shoes a lot, but you realize, like in my case, as a bigger guy, I can't run in them in every single run. I need to have some time and like stability or comfort shoes, like my traditional Hoka runs. So I needed to learn how to adapt my training to that piece of equipment in terms of preparing for a race. So I had to have the bandwidth to do just that. And I couldn't do that in the last couple of weeks to my race when I've got to get in a long run. I can't go 5 miles out and then realize I can't run in these shoes anymore and go back. I've just ruined my 5-mile run, my 10-mile run. I'm probably already late to start with because I'm Coach Patrick, and then obviously things just go downhill, right? Having a gear plan also allows you to plan for the costs. It's no secret, the stuff that we love to do is crazy expensive. There's some alternate universe somewhere where bicycles and trainers and wetsuits and everything are not expensive. But having all this dialed in allows you to budget for it accordingly. So that's super important. Whether you're shopping online or shopping locally, whether you're using endurance nation discounts or not, having an opportunity to plan for the cost will allow you to get the gear that you want to get, that you think will benefit you most, and not be in a position where you need to buy a new wetsuit, but you're just going to buy the one that is the one that fits your price point, even though you know it's not the best wetsuit for you based off of what you've tried or the recommendations you have, etc. So being able to plan for those costs also makes things a little bit more user-friendly, especially if you're dealing with a spouse. And then finally, learning from experience. I think for me, having that gear plan allows you to create that record so you know better, right? That's the whole idea, just like our training logs do. So if you tried new shoes, you planned for new shoes, you went to test them out, they didn't work for you, you want to know that, for example, adding zero drop shoes to your routine hurts your feet. You don't want to just leave it in the back of your head. You want to have that written down, like a record, because you're going to come back in like a year or two, some new thing is going to come out you never thought of before, but it sounds awesome. You're going to want to get it. And you need to be able to step back and say, oh, that's right. The last time I tried to change my crank length, this didn't work out, or this type of crank wasn't compatible, or I couldn't do that because the shoes were discontinued. And so I went with this model. Here's why. All those little nuggets of information are super important for you so that you can make the next best decision. I'm not talking about, writing a 15-page report, but I am saying having a breakdown of the decisions that you have made about your gear is really, really important. One of the things I've always wished you could have is like a shoe family tree, so I could know that the Nike Zoom Vaporfly begat the whatever fly, so I could always find the next latest shoe that was in the tree that I wanted. Similarly, your gear choices will be just like that as well. So plan that out so that when you need to go back and fix something, you can work your way back up the decision tree, find the inflection point, and go from there. Super, super important, okay? And more importantly, I think in the context of Endurance Nation is being able to share that out. So if someone says to you, why did you go with a hardtail for a Leadville? You could say, oh, well, I did it because of this. Like, you have all those reasons and they're organized, and you can just be like, bruh, and stick it in the forums, or put it on GroupMe, or email it to someone and help them out. And it's not all this information that's stuck in the back of your head, right? Because that's how we work as a team. We're a team, okay? So the way I tried to think of this through was going through the annual progression or 3-year progression, and I give some examples along the way. So when you're first year starting out, obviously here on the team, you've got a massive benefit to use your teammates as a resource. But the easiest way to get started with whatever your chosen sport may be is just looking at pictures and looking at race reports. I'm not talking about looking at magazine ads, right? I'm not talking about looking at super sponsored athletes and the stuff that they run or swim or ride or whatever they do, whatever your sport is, whatever it is. Those folks are sponsored. They've got crazy stuff. Sometimes they have demo stuff, whatever. But just take some pictures of your teammates here from the team. Find albums from races and see what people are wearing. The race reports are even better because people will tell you, for example, these shorts saved my race, right? These socks were incredible. Let's see, this sunscreen I swear by. I'll never use sunscreen X, Y, or Z again, because my dermatologist will shoot me. I raced on these wheels and they were the best, etc. All of those data points come into play and will really help you make those decisions, because having that information on a product that likely no one else in your world has ever purchased before really becomes valuable. So starting in those two places, either from the race photo side or here on the team, going to the race report section and searching through those race reports in the forums and just gathering the information. So what type of bike do people typically use in Lake Placid, if you have that question? What type of, if someone had a breakthrough race, what were the changes that they made, right? How are they working on body composition? What equipment did they use for that? Was there a particular scale? Was there a particular routine they did? What did it involve? You can see all of that stuff get delineated, and then you get to start at that point, which is the idea, right? So we want to start with that level of basic information. And then, as I mentioned earlier, for the first year equipment decisions, we want stuff that you can use that have dual purposes. We want stuff that you can train and race with. If they're only race wheels or only race tires, or if it's only, if it's only a long john wetsuit, you're not going to wear that in the pool every day. You're going to use that thing, for maybe a couple practice swims and then race day. That's not the top of your list in terms of priority items, right? So we want things that we can get dual purpose out of. So if you can buy a bicycle helmet that's also somewhat aero, for example, then great. You've got a proper cycling helmet, but it's also aerodynamic, dual purpose. Sunglasses are easy. Those are generally dual purpose. Your swim goggles are dual purpose. You don't typically have different goggles for racing and training in. Running shoes can be dual purpose as long as you're, taking care of them and making sure that they can, last for your training and racing, etc. Sometimes your kit can be dual purpose depending on what you train and race in. And so thinking about those equipment decisions in your first year, we want to start with stuff that you get the most bang out of your buck for, and that you're not spending money on things that really are just for very specific situations, because that really ties up your money in a particular area that may become more useful to you later down the road. You may change your mind altogether, and you don't want to necessarily get stuck in a particular category or area, right? So from a triathlon perspective, what does this mean? So I give some examples here of equipment that people could use. These are easy things. So when you think about year one, these are the basic things you need. Like if you think about, you go back to retro pictures of triathlon, like not when triathlon wasn't cool in the 90s, but when triathlon was way cool in the 80s, the Bud Light series and all that stuff. You go back to what those folks were swimming, biking, and running in. It's crazy, right? There was the super, super minimalist. Those of you old enough know that back in the day, you didn't even really eat for marathons. You just had water, and maybe there was like one water stop, and you still ran 26 miles, and you ran it faster than most of us run today, which is completely unbelievable. But you don't need a ton of equipment to be successful, right? So you can also end up renting a lot of stuff. Shops will let you rent a wetsuit, for example, if you are really worried about your swim. You can do that, right? You could even rent a bike, I guess, if you wanted to. But you just need a bicycle. You need a helmet. You need some good running shoes, so swimsuit and some tinted goggles. Obviously, there's some shorts and things in there you need as well, but you don't need super fancy stuff. And the other thing that I do recommend in this first year is that free training log. I do recommend that people, even in their first year, regardless of the sport, whatever you do, that you are tracking and just writing down all the stuff that you did. Again, coming back to those decision points later in the day. So as you've got people who you're advising, especially those of you here on the team who contribute so much, when someone is asking about shoes, or someone's asking about bikes, or someone's asking about nutrition, it's always really good to get a sense of where they're at on their evolutionary path as an athlete. It's super easy to give the most complex answer, but in many ways, just giving people an answer that really fits with where they are will help them walk that path as best they can and make the right decision for themselves, which is ultimately better than just kind of overwhelming people with information. And so these are the basic things that I think of people from a triathlon perspective. And you can go through this with any sport that you want. So in year two, we go from the fundamentals, which is year one. In year two, we start thinking about what are some ways that we can upgrade our training gear? What are some basic things that we need here just to make sure that we're good? So the theme, improved training, that's what we want, okay? So a great example would be something like a GPS watch with heart rate. So maybe you didn't want to spend $400 on that watch before. You waited for it to come on sale. You put up a price alert, whatever it is. Now you got the GPS watch, you got the heart rate. Now we've got pace, we've got distance, we've got heart rate, which we can use for almost all the disciplines. And all of that really then serves to feed into your log, give you information in terms of how you're pacing your sessions, give you feedback over time in terms of how those sessions are stacking up. That's super important. At this point in time, you're probably saving for a nice bike, and that's a great thing to get into. Start budgeting some money to set aside for a good bike. I would recommend that people do purchase some form of indoor trainer in their second year as a triathlete, just to have a resource for you to train independent of weather, whether it's seasonal or just it happens to be a crappy day outside. Helps you train independent of daylight hours and all the restrictions that kind of fall into our normal life, right? So as we think about how we manage these items, we want to build them in into a progression that really helps you become better. So in your second year, you're becoming more serious. You're spending more time on the bike inside the team. We've got you doing more specific workouts. All of that is definitely more achievable on an indoor trainer, for example. In addition to those basic items for upgrade in year two, I would recommend that people do take a look at nutrition and accessories. A great opportunity for people to up their game in their second year of training is to take a good look at their nutrition. I don't mean go out and get some crazy like beet powder extract that can only be absorbed through your eyelids. I'm just saying, what do you eat? When do you eat it? You may be focusing on a particular recovery phase of your training, and maybe a meal replacement supplement you're going to use for your breakfast, and maybe just better training nutrition, whatever that may be. And then on top of that, having something to carry that nutrition with you. So something like a fuel belt or whatever other vest or tool or whatever you use, being able to take that nutrition with you. As you become smarter as an athlete, you learn over time that your own personal tendencies for nutrition, taking care of your body, keeping yourself mentally and physically engaged, all of that comes down to, in a large part, managing your nutrition when you're training and racing. This way, if you do that right, then you don't have to be so, tied up about what you had for lunch or what your meal was the night before, because you've got a lot of that nutrition with you on the day. And having the right equipment to carry that nutrition is important. And the best part is that's a super small purchase, or it's even like a good gift idea, right? Someone can hook you up like that for sure. Okay. So in year three, we start thinking about racing gear. Inside Endurance Nation, with our 3-year plan, by the time we get to year three, we're all about having that personal best race. And it becomes more about having the equipment that's going to allow you to do just that. So now we're looking at free speed from equipment. That can mean more aerodynamic. It can mean a lighter. It might mean something very specific for the races that you're doing. So if you're tackling a challenge that's particularly hilly, you might have a lightweight piece of equipment that you're going to work into your racing regime that may not be something you'd use all the time or with other races, but because of the terrain in which you'll be competing in, we make that decision that it's an important purchase, right? And all this on a sliding scale works from how concerned or serious you are about performance and what your goals are, right? So, going with a shoe that's 6 ounces lighter than your training flat doesn't sound like a ton, but when you run a marathon, 6 ounces per foot, 12 ounces together across however many thousands of steps that does add up. That does make you faster. And so even sometimes these smaller changes can make a big impact. So I want to be mindful of that. So the other recommendations that I have outside of the basic examples are, a racing bike. If you're in your 3rd year and you're serious, I'm sorry, you're hooked. There's no other way to say it. Get a racing bike. It's just the way to go. And we do recommend getting a power meter. Depending on your bike and the setup, there's different types of power meters available. The good news is they generally are getting cheaper and cheaper. You can even get, single-sided power for the, like $300, $400 range, depending into a pedal setup, which is about as cheap and as consistent as they come, which is fantastic. You may be looking at some racing shoes, like race-specific shoes, racing flats, shoes that you'll bust out just for the big day itself. That's a great upgrade, like I just mentioned earlier. Something like a really nice wetsuit can make a difference, especially if you've been borrowing or renting or using someone's old one. Having a proper fitting wetsuit is a game changer for those of us who are just not great swimmers. And so that's another great upgrade as well. And the good news about these types of purchases is that 2 out of these 3 are not only significant on race day, but they also outlast your year. A good wetsuit, if you take care of it, lasts 2 to 3 years, sometimes even 4. A good bike should last you many years as long as you maintain it and take care of it. So those are items that we think about. So as you move into the later progressions with your year, we think more about the equipment that's going to help you from a racing perspective. So again, we start off with the basics, make sure we've got those locked down. Then we move on to look at things that are going to help you with your training and make you a better athlete because it helps you be more consistent, more effective, whether that's giving you information, allowing you to train consistently, making your recovery cycle faster, all of those elements. And then the 3rd year, we move to the racing side. And that's when we start saying, what are the decisions we can make here in year 3 that are going to tangibly make me a faster athlete? So whereas in year 2, your investment might be in a second race, like a revenge race or an opportunity to try my protocol again, so that year 3, you're able to race heading in because you've had additional race experience. Again, we're just planning out our time and our money accordingly so we can be successful. At the end of the day, as I always say, the longer you play the game, the better you get at the game. My job is to help you stay in the game longer. And one of the ways we do that is by managing our resources, all of them, time, money, etc., as best as we can. All right, so that's kind of the gear shopping perspective, and I just did it from a triathlon lens, but we can have conversations about what it means for just cycling, for aqua bike, for running, for ultra running, whatever that may be, okay? Let me talk very briefly here before I get to the Q&A about a gear schedule. So when I think about a gear schedule, this for me moves more from the macro cycle of when can I get what I need, and moves more into the how do I take care of the stuff that I have. And this by and far is the biggest problem that most athletes have. They go for an ocean swim, they get out on the beach, they take their wetsuit off in the sand, and they just throw it in the back of their car, right? They don't rinse it off, they don't clean it out, they don't fold it up nicely, they don't let it dry. And compounding over time, your equipment has wear and tear on it. It could have lasted another year or 2 longer. You may have become more aware of it if you've been maintaining it. And so having a gear schedule really helps. These days it's kind of cheating because you can have online calendars. You can literally say set a reminder for next month or next weekend to do this, and the alarm goes off. But still, it comes down to the discipline of maintaining your equipment. Okay. At the end of the day, your job is to crush that equipment. If you've got a bike, you need to ride the heck out of that bike. You got shoes, you want to rip them up. But at the same time, our performance and our success over time is dependent in a large part on making sure that our equipment is functioning, our equipment is keeping us safe, and not putting us at a risk at all. So we want to be very important to that. So the simple rule is if you love it, it'll love you back. And so we want to be really mindful of how we're taking care of equipment. And for me, the biggest thing, it's not so much like, oh, my shoes are kind of old and my legs hurt. It's more of a, hey, I've got to run today and I can't find my belt. I've got a huge ride today and my tire is flat, or my rim is torqued, or my chain snapped. Like, we've got enough people here on the team that crazy stuff happens all the time just because of the sheer volume of numbers. And a lot of it is completely avoidable. If you'd spent any time with your bike, you would have known that we could actually see through the surface of your tire to the tube, like we were Superman using our X-ray vision. If that's the case, we shouldn't be riding that on your 100-mile ride for the first day of the year. It's a great way to ruin your day, right? So it's just, staying on maintenance also just keeps you paying more attention to your gear and keeps you on top of managing it, right? And then ultimately, we're building the habits that are going to serve you well. So we have a sense of what it means to maintain your stuff, but we have a sense of just that rhythm of saying, hey, I went for a ride. This is what I did before my ride. This is what I did after my ride. This is what I do every month when I ride, all of those pieces, right? Maybe, as Francis suggests, maybe you actually build in a bike fit session. So you say to yourself, hey, how about every 2 years I get a bike fit to see if things have changed for me? That may also be a great piece. So all of that just kind of goes on a schedule. Honestly, it takes 10, 15 minutes. We could probably do it in the forums, and then just post that thing, and you just got a little schedule to follow, and just really keeps you on track, right? So for me, all of this is pretty straightforward. So, and many of you know this from experience, but this goes out to the beginners, and maybe you'll pick up something new here. So running gear, I think, is the stuff that breaks down the fastest, just like we do when we run, right? So shoes they recommend should be replaced every 250 to 300 miles. Or at the very least, I move those shoes out of my main rotation and sub them into like a secondary rotation. So my older shoes, I've got like so many pairs of shoes, like many of you, I may run in them once a month or whatever, as they're kind of worn down, and I got my favorite shoes for this terrain or this type of run. They get pushed off the shelf from my main set of my main running shoe, that the workhorse shoe that I'm doing those intervals in during the week, or those repeats in, and they get pushed down the road to other workouts. But that allows me to have those shoes last a little bit longer until eventually they get pushed to the yard work pile, or they're donated. But you really want to be on top of that. When someone comes to me and tells me they're experiencing knee pain or shin pain or foot pain, the first thing I ask them is how old their shoes are. And you'd be blown away that like literally only 1 in 10 can tell me when they purchased their shoes. I mean, like to the month. I'm not even talking about the day. I'm just saying, like, when did you buy them? And they're like, a while ago. And that's just fundamentals. That's 101. You have to know this stuff, right? The running shoes that you do buy, you can't wear them all the time. If you've got brand new kicks, you can't wear them to work. You can't wear them just to the coffee shop. Those are your running shoes. If you are not running, you are not wearing them. Okay, that is it. If you want to wear those super awesome shoes, run more. There's some motivation for you, right? Good. The best way to pick out the right side of shoes is to find a shoe store that you trust. There's usually every town or area's got one good one or something, either whether or not you shop from them, get some great advice and input, and just having someone who looks at your gait and just gives you feedback is just another piece of knowledge. They may not be 100% correct, but having someone else observe how you walk, how you move, the bottom of your shoe will help you learn a little bit more about who you are as a runner, right? Where your foot strike is, the type of shoe that's best for you. Do you need control shoes, etc. And then finally, set those reminders to just check it out and shop. Some people literally, used to write with indelible marker on their shoe, like, January 1st, 2011, YOLO. And then they would go back and say, oh, what date is it? And they're going to go check. Otherwise, you can put a reminder in your calendar. You can track miles on your shoes and things like Final Surge and Training Peaks. Or you can just set a reminder. Like if I buy shoes on January 1st, I literally would just say on my phone as I'm checking out, remind me to check my shoes on April 1st. Like, what's going on? It's been 3 months. Where are my shoes at? Do I need to make another purchase? Because I want to make that decision in April for my June or July race. I don't want to wait till I get to June or July and be like, man, my feet are kind of hurting. Do I or do not want to use these shoes? Oh, now I got to wait for the shoes to show up. Now I got to try and break them in, and my race is coming. I don't know if I trust these shoes or not. What am I going to do? All that can be avoided with that simple schedule, right? From a cycling gear schedule, this is pretty easy as well. You've got 2 types of checks going on with the bike. Number 1 is the pre-ride flight check, which is so important. So we check our tire pressure. Everyone's pretty comfortable with that. We check our brakes, front and back brakes. Do they work? That's a classic one. I've had more than a few athletes just get on their bikes in front of me and crash because they forgot to tighten their brakes down, which is very simple. And then the bounce test, which is the easiest way to see if something is wrong. You just pick your bike, 1 or 2 inches off the ground and just bounce it a little bit. Just see if anything rattles, clinks, moves, etc. now's your chance to fix it because you're not riding, because there's some sort of inherent mental sunk cost with having to stop a ride. You say, I've already been riding for 17 minutes. If I stop now, it's going to ruin my workout. I'd much rather just go another 43 minutes to hit my hour, keep my fingers crossed that the wheel's not going to fall off, my fork's not going to crack, I'm not going to hit a gigantic invisible pothole in the middle of a bike path and ruin my season. Just seeing if Scott's listening. Oh, he's listening. He's not listening. don't ride on a bike path like Scott. So so that's an easy one. And just to go through that, that's a very simple test, but you want to know if your seat post is loose, if the bars are moving. Those are just things you can check real quickly, right? On top of that, you've got your basic schedule. So once a month, clean up your bike. Cleaning up your bike is really simple. Go to Home Depot, get one of those 5-gallon buckets, walk around the store and buy some sponges, buy some rags, buy some simple green. That's pretty much all you need. And then once a month, you fill up the bucket with some water and some simple green, and you wipe the bike down and spray it down with a hose, all the peats, all the parses, everything like that. You're all good. That's a pretty straightforward way to just kind of make sure everything's working and it's happy. As you're doing that, you're going to learn about your bike. You're going to see where things are getting wear and tear. That can also give you some good insights as to like, hey, these brakes are really worn down, or, oh man, my pedals are kind of loose, or whatever those situations may be. You'll learn a great deal from doing that basic maintenance, right? And then finally, I really encourage people to spend time messing around with your bikes. If you got to tighten your pedals, pull out your phone or your laptop or whatever and look at YouTube and see how people do it. Buy that wrench, add it to your list of tools that you have. Fixing your bike, with the exception of 1 or 2 parts, is not rocket science. But so many of us just would much rather just take it to the shop and put it in. But having the tools and the wherewithal to fix it, anyone can do it if you just spend a few minutes and spend the time on it. And I do recommend it for sure. That really saves you tons of time and can also save you money as you're kind of going through the process of taking care of your gear and managing everything as you go. All right. One more, Scott, you can tell me more about that again. I want to hear. You haven't told me that story about the lawsuit. All right. So Scott, not only fixing bikes, he's fixing townships. All right. So finally, last words of advice here for you guys as you think about your gear and your schedule. Again, remember, try and avoid those, what I call single function purposes. Like, I got the most space age neoprene swim cap ever. Like, you just don't need that thing. Like, it's, who wants that, right? We want something we can use all the time that makes a big difference for our training, right? We also want to avoid those just really hyper specific. Like, I just went all in on these trail shoes, which I love. Okay, how often do you really run on trails? If you're racing and running on trails, then great. You're doing trail races, awesome. If you just kind of like to run on trails every once in a while, not worth it. Like, let's put that money somewhere else. Avoid the sort of shiny object, red ball bouncing syndrome, and really focus on what's going to make the biggest difference for you. Those are the types of conversations that you'll have with me, the conversations you'll have with the Wicked Smart members, about really kind of coming back to you and saying, what do you need to focus on? What's the next best step for you? And then finding the equipment, resources that can help you do a better job at that next step to, again, work your way up, okay? Avoid training tools that don't involve the basic movements of your sport. That's something like when people will try and sell you random stuff, like, here's a respirator, you can breathe in and out and it will help you become better at breathing. Like, no, just train. Like, the breathing will take care of itself, right? What's another one? Like, I don't know, like a Thigh Master. I don't know. That's not going to help you become a better athlete. Like, that's not something that we fundamentally need. It doesn't help you become better at any of the disciplines, right? We don't want to have something that's like a widget or a tool that's designed to make you a better cyclist by helping you flex your feet at your desk. That doesn't, no, just get something that's going to help you ride more, ride better, spend more time on the bike. So remember, really think about those first order mechanics around how you're making the decision, so that this is something that's going to really impact you over time. So a great example of that would be, looking at your bike setup. One of the biggest changes people make is adapting the front end of their bike to become more aerodynamic, whether it's between the bars, aero bars, hydration system, pads, maybe changing the positioning on the front end. You want to be comfortable up there. You want to be rock solid. That's something that helps you in training. It also helps prepare you to be successful on race day. That's a great investment. Maybe you want to mount the computer in an aerodynamic fashion. You want all of that to work out. That's fantastic, right? Going nuts on tires. At some point in time, you can go, I mean, you can go deep down the rabbit hole as you want. You can spend as much money as you want on the tires, but at some point in time, there's a place of diminishing returns. Also, not to mention that you just spent like 4 hours of your life searching tires. How much of that really does matter? And you sort of have to kind of reconcile those elements and figure out what is going to make the biggest piece of change for you. And then finally, it helps you avoid those impulse purchases. So when something pops up and says, "Oh my God, this this running power meter is awesome. It's on sale." Just taking a step back and saying, am I really working on my run right now? Is this really important? Is the run coming up in my progression? Or is this just something I'm going to get and I'm just going to stick on a shelf and not use? Is it worth it to me? Is it not worth it to me? Those are great questions to ask and to openly discuss in the Gear Forum. But I do encourage you to sort of add your own sense of due diligence, I guess, around your own athletic development in terms of what's the next best thing. In many ways, I think people shop for gear like my kids shop in the supermarket. They just go down the aisle and they see something and they grab it and they throw it in the cart. They hope I don't see it before they check out. All of a sudden, I got like Fruit Loops in my house, which is the last thing I want. And so we want to avoid those decisions because more often than not, they take you off the path from focusing on what matters, and they'll distract you as well, not to mention potentially make you unsafe. So those are my tips on gears and gear management and gear scheduling. Lots of great comments coming in from you guys. Oh my goodness. Oh, all right. Oh my God. You guys are jokes. All right. I want to hear, I can't believe no one has mentioned a toaster yet, which I still have yet to hear the story about buying a toaster. I'm not sure if Francis got his toaster. That's awesome. I want to hear more about it. Okay. So I know there's some silly chat. So keep the silliness to the chat, which I love to see, and I will read your chats later. But if people have comments or questions about gear or what's the next best thing to buy, I think you can unmute yourself and then chime in and talk. So I can't see everyone. There's so many people here tonight. Otherwise, I will unmute you at random. Francis, it looks like you're doing some jaw exercises there. Are you about to scream out loud, "I bought a toaster"? Is that your plan? Oh no, I can't hear you. I unmuted you. Hold on. It might be me though. It is me. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. All right, say something now. Oh man. No, I didn't break it. Hold on, where are you? I can barely hear you. I need a toaster here. If I had a toaster, it'd be better.
No.
I hear you a little bit, yeah.
Broke the internet.
Totally. No, there. See, Scott works. See, it's Canada. It's not me. That's what it is.
It's always like that.
Send a tax guy to do a tech job.
Hey now. Hey.
Canadian taxes, no less. They're socialist.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, anyway, so Francis, everyone wants to know, even though you're an ultra runner, will you be getting a bike fit this year, or are you just going to say forget it and you're going to spend that money on ultra running? No bike fits. No way. Why bike fit? All right. Okay. Well, as your friend and coach, I will not let you race again on a bicycle until I want a picture of you on that bike. In fact, no joke, when people come to the team now, I ask all of them to post pictures in their threads of them on a bike and them running because I need to see it now because it just moves it so much faster. There will not be another, there can only be one Francis, but we will not have that happen again.
It won't happen again.
It won't happen again. Awesome.
Francis, don't ride bikes.
Just don't ride bikes. Just do other stuff. Just drink beer and wine and all the good stuff. All right. Anyone else who's got thoughts about gear, something you're looking at getting for this year? I just talked to someone today who got their stride and was still trying to figure it out. For example, as a new upgrade piece of gear.
I got new ultralight skimo gear.
Yes, we still have yet to see pictures. But so the difference was this time now you're actually running up the mountain, you said, right?
It's unbelievable how light this stuff is.
Yeah.
You pick it up and it's like, where's the rest of the ski boot? And then I got my regular skis from the car afterwards. I was like, I almost got a hernia.
What was I doing to myself? Yeah, you almost want to go back and do that race again, right? And be like, how much faster would I be right now? That's awesome.
I'm doing a race at the end of March that goes from Bolton Valley over Stowe, over the top of Mansfield,
Okay.
down into the Stowe Valley, and then back up and ends in Smugglers.
Whoa.
It's like, I don't know, 14 miles or something and 10,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah.
The guy was like, if you want to finish in daylight, you better have real ski-mo skis.
That makes your decision pretty simple. But that's a great example of like spending money for, like, just in the greater context of innovation, spending money on facilitating the greater aerobic engine and conditioning and making it work with your lifestyle and the fact that you spend time in the mountains. And that's a great investment, right? Like I totally
And, and the lesson was I did it all wrong. I didn't investigate the stuff.
right.
And I showed up at my first race with like the equivalent of a carbon fiber upright touring bike. It's the best way to describe it, and just got destroyed.
Right.
Had the wrong equipment.
Right,
Fortunately, I was able to engineer a really good swap, three-way swap.
Three-way swap. Oh, I'll leave it to you. That's fantastic. Well, all right. So I do expect to see pictures, or the team wants to see them. So put them on the dashboard, or put them, I don't know.
Instagram. Mariah liked my Instagram the other day from Endurance Nation.
Oh yeah, I saw your picture. I saw your picture.
You.
I know, but I saw it, man. You were that's some work, man.
Screen grab.
those are my. I see that picture and I'm like, man, that's a picture of me like just after I finished my Zwift workout. I'm like sort of out of the picture. I'm definitely worked. Like that's all good. That's awesome. All right. Well, anyone else here on the chat? Who else do we have? I'm trying to see how else I can make this fit on the screen because there's too many of you. Anyone else? Janine, Rory, come on.
Yeah, so I haven't pulled the trigger on Normatec yet.
Okay.
And I've seen, lots of things in the forums, et cetera. And I would be interested to hear comments to and fro, for and against. And I know there's a lower cost version as well.
Right, the Air Relax.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it definitely, for me, that falls into that sort of racing category. Like if you're one of those athletes who's going to be putting in some serious miles, and your workout time is not your own, right? Like you're compressed. Your long run has to happen and you don't have time to move it or change it. And it's going to be stacked up against other stuff. Like for example, let me put it this way. Most of the time I don't use my Normatecs except for training camps. And then the last couple of weeks to my race when I did my 18-mile run and that was a real stretch. And I know I feel it now. I know I'm going to feel it tomorrow. I spend like an hour in those bad boys and use it, but it's not something that I use every week. But for the people we work with who have, or just again on those crazy schedules, or they're folks like teachers who spend a ton of time, or they work their flight attendants and they're just on their feet, irrespective of their training, they're on their feet all the time. Those folks definitely benefit from having that advanced recovery, which makes a big difference. So, if it's something, I don't want to call it incremental, but if it's something that's not that, if your life is super easy from a work perspective, you're at a desk, or you can move a run and things like that. If recovery hasn't been a historical problem for you, then I would say I would find something else that may make that edge better. It could be a better, nutritional solution for you than a physical recovery solution. Then again, if you've just got, money and you just love gadgets, like all of these decisions kind of are predicated on that. Like some people just love to collect stuff. So that's also fine as well.
Okay, perfect. I do love to collect stuff, but I get it. Thanks.
I have 2 pairs of them. I don't use them enough. And that was my New Year's resolution, to try to use them more. And 1 pair I won as a contest prize. But
Okay.
I read something by some coach out there who was that he had a whole protocol for how often to use them, what cycle to use them on, and I think he even used them like pre-race to like activate his muscles when he wasn't able to do a warm-up.
Yeah, LeBron. I think LeBron James I've heard of like LeBron James has used them in that same manner as before. There's some compression benefits before an event, although the like beet juice, the jury's out as to term, it's not necessarily going to make you a better racer on an Ironman day, but it does prepare. My problem is that when the compression goes on, I pass out. Like I'm not sure what happens, but like whether it's the motion or the sound or just what's happening, they just wake me up later. I remember the first time I fell asleep, I was like I was like panic trying to find my phone because I was like, how long have these things been on my legs? And other detrimental effects to having compression on your legs for like 3.5 hours. It's like level 10. Thankfully not, although my legs, I looked like I was from another planet for a couple of days. Yeah, so I would kind of balance. That's a great question. So that's one of those sort of like, what's the percent gain on that relative to other stuff that you could do? It's hard to say. So for you, like for example, like you've been doing a lot of running lately, relative to your normal strengths, and it's a huge investment for you, obviously, sort of moving down the line athletically. So in your case, it's quite possible that right now you may benefit. It may be worthwhile for you to, pick up a pair, aftermarket or from someone, and it's not that's not a full price deal, because how long is this going to last for you outside of this phase? You could be more diligent and say, I'm going to run with these compression socks on, and I'm going to do this nutritional stuff, and that may get you through this stretch, right? Until you need them again. But yeah, that's a great question. All right. Anyone else have gear questions out there? I'm not even going to open the chat. I don't even want to know what's in there. If you're chatting me and hoping I'm going to find it, I don't want to see what people are talking about because it's only going to distract me. But so if you do have questions, let's do this. I'll put this out there, and then I'll start a thread in the gear forum about just kind of, maybe what's your, top 10, game-changing purchases you feel that you've had, and just kind of see what people come back with. I encourage you guys to participate. Again, the resources we have here in the team, whether it's passive, like reading those race reports, not that we had a lot of schema race reports that Scott could have read, but if you're getting into ultra running, you read the ultra running race reports, you'll see what people are talking about and what they don't like. That also helps you identify people who are just good to reach out to, and everyone on the team is super friendly. And just, hopefully, again, the whole point is starting you at the next level to move forward. And so we're getting advance notice, planning ahead, et cetera, whether it's the behavior in terms of maintaining your equipment, or it's just making a better decision about where to put your time and your money. More often than not, we look to spend money on things that we think are going to make us better, but it's not always guaranteed the same rate of return that we're told at the upfront, at the point of sale, I guess. And so all the time I'm trying to think, more in alignment of what's the best long-term investment for you, what's really going to work. Something like upgrading your pain cave, which I did last year, was a big step forward for me because I spend so much time in there. I spend more time in there now, even in season than I did out of season. I'm just safer. I enjoy my training more. It's a more realistic experience. That was a great investment for me. So adding a $300 flat screen TV seemed crazy at the time, but now is a no-brainer because of how much time I spend there. But that was a big delta for me. Adding a Vasa trainer, I just lost touch with swimming over the years because getting to the pool and, being at home with the kids and then working from home just got too hard for me to budget that time and then match my time against the Russian ladies doing their swim aerobics and jazzercise. And then the swim team started, then it didn't start, then it's a holiday and we're cleaning. Now I just have it in my basement. I don't have excuses, And so I've, made those purchases that allow me to do more, which at the end of the day make a big difference. So all of that's really helpful. So I'll start that thread. I want to thank you guys for participating tonight. Before I let you go, do remember there are some pieces to talk about in the forums around seminars coming up and seminar ranking. Would love your feedback on that to make sure that we're going to do the next best seminar, which is a setup where you guys are participating or people interested on that topic are participating. Also, this Thursday night, I'm going to do a call just like this one to get people's feedback on the site and some input. I got some great input in the thread, and I want to have those of you who are interested in contributing give me more feedback, making sure the next thing I do is the next best thing. I'd love to have you guys participate in that, or at least in the follow-up thread as well. And of course, you got the What's Up EN email last week. with all the things that are coming up in February. So I'm sure you've bookmarked your calendar. You know all the times that I will be on Facebook Live, office hours, presentations, etc. So please do show up, spread the word, tell other people these things are good, and be prepared to participate and bring your questions. This is a great time for you guys to connect with me outside of the phone calls and the forums. So try and be as accessible as possible. All right, guys. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys at the next event, whatever that is. My calendar will tell me. Until then, I'll go back to writing training plans and herding cats. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks.